Yeah, we thought you'd gone live. Everybody else is here. They're just joining us now. Tanzeem's there. Bernard was there. Where's Bernard? What time is it in the US?
It's about 7
in the morning.
In the morning, yeah.
But so it's still Wednesday, isn't it?
It
is. Yeah, all good. Okay. Well, it's 8 o'clock here in the evening, and warm welcome to everybody. Wanjiku, are you going to join us on the panel? You're very welcome to.
Thank you. I will be in there, and if I need to make any intervention or any reaction or make a submission that this wonderful panel may have omitted, I will let you know. But so far, so good. So I'll turn off my camera and my microphone, but I'm on standby.
No worries. Okay.
Unlocking, really have to somehow loop around to just make sure that nothing is left out. It's a very well balanced panel.
Problem.
So I will switch off and leave it to David.
Thank you very much. And look, I know that you've been frantically running around this morning trying to find the key to unlock Africa in the morning session. So now we're going to do it all over again with this exclusive panel that we have with us. And I'm going to start with Walt because Walt is the furthest away, I think it's fair to say, in the US. And I know that I'm probably going to interrupt your coffee there, Walt, with the first question. But Walt, you're based in the US. You're in Houston with IHS Markit, and we listen to you regularly during the year at events, setting the scene, setting the global supply-demand picture. But we're gonna pick your brains now for the African region, and something I'm going to ask you straight away is in relation to not the well, I guess it is in a way related to the traditional fossil LPG product that we have, but there has been in the US and in Europe, and I think it's fair to say in New Zealand, a lot of discussion about whether we can develop LPG in a sustainable form, in a bio form. And my question is that with all the interest in bio LPG, and it's come astonishingly quickly over the last couple of years or so. I think 3 or 4 years ago, we hadn't really even considered bio LPG as a serious contender, but now it's on top of everybody's mind, particularly, as I said, in North America and Europe. And my question is, as these developed regions of the world start to move towards a net zero future, do you think there'll be an impact on countries like the African region for fossil LPG? I mean, do you think that they'll find a distressed position for fossil LPG if everybody suddenly turns towards bio LPG? What's your thoughts on that to start off with?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's a really great question, David. So, as you know, the global market for LPG is around 320 plus minus million tons a year, and with some of the largest markets in the world, like Europe, parts of the U.S., East Asia, New Zealand. New Zealand is not a huge market, but it's indicative of the fact that they're setting these these zero carbon goals, and as you pointed out earlier in your safety presentation, LPG is a fossil fuel for the most part. The amount of bio LPG right now is only, at least to what's actually leaving plant gates is only a couple hundred thousand tons a year globally, right? So it's an insignificant, truthfully, part of the industry at the moment, and it's not really the issue so much about whether more bio LPG gets produced. It's really a matter of whether countries follow through with their with these zero carbon goals. Because if they do, then they're going to, LPG, at least fossil LPG, is going to be a target. So you take Europe, for example, that has about 32 million tons a year of total demand, of which about 20 is fuels, and this is 2020, estimate, and another 12 million ton is for feedstocks. And so, the 20 million tons in fuels is an obvious target. And, and so if you're going to eliminate fossil fuels, and LPG is a fossil fuel, ergo, you're going to, at some point that has to go. And the other thing is, the 12 million tons that's going into feedstocks, well, you might think, well, geez, it's only being converted into other products, so there's no emissions there. But the truth is that all of these chemical processes have process heating, like in a steam cracker that makes, monomers like ethylene. Then, what's happening is they're using natural gas and other fuels to fire the furnaces. And so that is also at risk for that reason. So all of the LPG that's being used in Europe, the 32 million tons, is at risk. And if you look at what Liquid Gas Europe has put together for their pathways to 2050, they only have around 13 million tons of bio-LPG identified by 2050. And so that's all fuel, right? So if they really are looking at 100% bio-LPG, which is their goal, then you're looking, even by their own estimate, you're dropping by half. And, my estimate would be that probably only they're only going to get a fraction of that likely, because it's going to be supply limited on the bio-LPG. But regardless of whether or not they can get the bio-LPG or not, if they follow through with their sustainability, their zero carbon goals, then what it may do is force people, if they can get LPG, the bio-LPG, well, great, and they'll be able to transition to it. But if they can't get the bio-LPG, then likely they're going to have to go to another sustainable fuel, whether it's gas, biogas, or whether it's maybe it's sustainable electricity, et cetera. So from a fossil perspective, and to get around to your question here, we don't expect to see a huge, we expect to see slowing growth in LPG production globally. And eventually we should, as refined product demand levels off in the mid-30s, LPG won't slow as much because a significant portion of it comes from non-associated gas, not associated with the production of crude oil. But nevertheless, the growth is going to slow down. And but we're still looking at huge amounts of LPG, fossil LPG. They're going to be available, and they're going to have to be used somewhere. If they're not used in Europe, and they're not used in California, and they're not used in East Asia, and they're not used in New Zealand, then they're going to have to go somewhere else in the market. And that means that they're probably going to be able to come to developing markets like South Asia or Africa, or and if that failing, they may show up in as chemical feedstocks. And so and as more becomes available, because it's being rejected by the zero carbon markets, then that's also going to put downward pressure on the pricing to be able to clear the market because it's a byproduct. So right. It should affect Africa unless the countries in Africa set their own zero carbon goals, in which case it won't be available to them either.
I think that's when we, thanks Walt, I think that's when we draw on that argument that displacing charcoal and wood as a cooking fuel for those 3 billion people with LPG is making a significant move towards that net zero carbon goal. And logic would then, you would hope, prevail. But so we won't know until probably 2030 or so whether you're right or not. But so the assumptions are, if you follow them through, you end up with a distressed cargo of fossil LPG who's got to find a home somewhere. Is basically the message. And in that situation, you would not expect high prices for that, would you?
No, I think it's going to put some downward pressure on the prices, and it's really a matter of whether governments follow through. Now, I will say that we've had, not for LPG, but there are plenty of countries around the world who set mandates for ethanol and for biodiesel and backed off of them eventually when economies got tight. So it's not impossible that mandates might, that affect zero carbon might get backed off if times get really tough. But as it stands, if you take the government's, the various governments' word for it, and if they really stick with their zero carbon goals, then you should see more LPG. You should see a redistribution of trade for fossil LPG.
Well, that certainly would be interesting, and certainly good news for the African market and African consumers. Thanks, Walt. Let's move now into one of those regions you talked about, Asia. I'm going to ask Tanzeem a question here, because if we go back no more than 5 or 6 years. Tanzeem, the LPG market in Bangladesh was something like 50,000 tons a year, and now you're well over 1 million tons a year, and that's been driven principally by a change of government policy supporting the use of LPG rather than using your dwindling natural gas reserves. So a switch in government policy all of a sudden has turned the LPG industry upside down, and it's going skyrocketing at the moment. So are there any lessons that you can give to African countries in respect to achieving a similar sort of result? Because I think they would dearly love to have that sort of outcome.
Sure. I hope you can hear me clearly.
Very clearly. And I should have mentioned Tanzeem Choudhury is with Omera Energy, one of our industry council members in Bangladesh, and a leading player there.
Thank you, David. First of all, I would like to thank the Petroleum Institute of East Africa and the World LPG Association for having me in this esteemed panel. And I will go straight to the points in government policy that has helped us in Bangladesh to grow this market to 1 million tons from 100,000 tons. And also what learnings we can use from the government policies of Bangladesh, and also replicate the same in Africa. So I joined the LPG industry in Bangladesh around 2015. And in 2015, the market size was around 150,000 tons. And an interesting thing we saw back then was a lot of officials and representatives from the Department of Explosives and from the Ministry of Energy. They were working on deputation in private LPG companies. And this was especially interesting because the point of government representatives working on short-term deputation in private LPG companies was for them to understand how an LPG industry can grow, for them to understand the safety policies that are to be there. And also the government representatives were going out of Bangladesh to different LPG seminars, to different LPG workshops. Even a lot of government representatives attended workshops by David Tyler. They were trying to understand progressive policies for the LPG industry. And by 2017, these people went from the private companies back to the government, and they started bringing in very progressive policies. The first policy was the enforcement. So LPG is a very green and safe fuel, but the usage of LPG was very well regulated. The policymakers in Bangladesh, they went with very strong safety enforcement initiatives, and that is why the Bangladesh LPG industry, being more than 1 million tons, has one of the lowest safety incident records. So the safety enforcement was very important, and I think even in Africa, the basic framework of safety has to be installed, and it has to be very progressive. Second, the policy that helped in Bangladesh was the demarcation of users. As David has mentioned, natural gas users were households, industries, and automotive users. In 2015 and 2016, the government saw that the natural gas reserves were coming down, and we had to import costly LNG. And the rightful initiative was taken that the household users will be shifted from natural gas to LPG only. And there was a very clear demarcation. And we see in other countries, a lot of developing countries, where government come out with policies that households will not use natural gas. They're encouraged to use LPG. At the same time, there is a contradicting way where households get access to natural gas. So our government was very strong with the user demarcation, and most of the new households coming after the new policy was installed, these households were using LPG cylinders, they were using reticulation systems. So this really helped to grow the market. The second learning is the demarcation of users. The third learning that we can all say it was useful for us was logistics. Bangladesh is a very densely populated country. It is a very we have a lot of economic activities going on, but the infrastructure has a lot of room for improvement. And the government understood that in order to deliver LPG to all the remote households, you would have to use innovation in logistics. And that is why the government worked with us to have progressive policies on using LPG barge, where we carry bulk LPG in barge and deliver to remote locations and have remote terminals. Also, we had policies to carry LPG in different sizes of trucks. In a lot of other countries, there are regulations where LPG carrying trucks have to be a certain size. Even in India, as far as I know, LPG road tankers have to be a certain size. They have to be a certain dimensions for safety. But the logistics policies in Bangladesh were country-specific and our road-specific. So the logistics policies helped us a lot to deliver LPG to remote locations. And most importantly, looking forward now, the government of Bangladesh has delivered LPG as an essential product. So although we are in COVID lockdown, LPG is being distributed and marketed, and we are also doing home delivery all across the nation. Essential product means it is required for national security. So this is also very important for us. It helps us to grow the market. And also looking forward, the LOAB, which is the Local LPG Association of Bangladesh, is in discussion with the government to introduce subsidy for LPG users. At least LPG users, when they pick up a cylinder for the first time, a type of subsidy that helps them to save the cost of the cylinder, so they can start paying the cost of the gas. So these are the three learnings and the two ways we are working for the future. And all policies have to be country specific, but these are the principal policies that help us unlock this growth in Bangladesh. Thank you.
Tanzeem, thank you very much. You talked about logistics, so I'm going to now turn to Bernard Bruyere from DEC. And DEC stands for Design, Engineering and Consultancy, and DEC is very heavily involved in the development of plant, of terminals, of installations. Bernard, it's obviously an important part of the jigsaw puzzle for Africa to have a sound logistical framework in place to receive the LPG and to distribute the LPG as well. So in terms of that, how do you, I would refer to it almost like a chicken and an egg. You know, you don't have demand for the product, but you need to have the installation, and you can't afford to put the installation in until the demand is there. So how do you mitigate the risk of investing in a country like Africa with a very small demand position, but potentially very large?
Yeah, but it looks like people, it depends on the countries, but for instance, in Kenya, it looks like our clients are anticipating the growth of LPG demand by asking us to quote for quite large LPG bulk storage plant. For us, large means between 10,000 metric tons and 30,000 metric tons. And that happened mostly around Mombasa. This is for Kenya. This is for East Africa. We have about the same behavior in West Africa, in Ivory Coast. And then that's about the same they ask us for strategic bulk LPG storage plant. And so we quote for many plants up to now, this last year, but you have to know that to have a plant between the first quotation and the contract signature, it takes between 2 and 3 years. So for some player, for some clients, we help them to elaborate the feasibility study to be sure that what they have in mind stick to the reality, and based on that feasibility study, they can we can help them to contact the World Bank or the BOAD for the West African countries, and in order to finance their project. This is not really the case for major players we are used to work with, such as Total or Oryx. They have everything in their hand. But for smaller players, they ask us more and more to help them to convince the financial institutions, such as the World Bank, to finance their project. But we secure our payment always. We have two means to secure our payment. That's the letter of credit, of course. And above that, you have what we call in Belgium the Credendo. Credendo is a credit insurance group similar to COFAS in France, and they support us to secure the payment. So for us, up to now, we did not face any loss of payment of our project.
Good. What about the possibility of a group of smaller players getting together and sharing a larger facility rather than everybody buying a small one? Is that something that you've worked on?
No. No, to be honest, no, because even the small, let's call them the small player, they prefer to remain small and decide on their own exactly what they want to do, then share a huge bulk storage. It's not always easy to share and to find a way that everybody have a nice, comfortable return.
Right, understood. Thanks, Bernard. Harriet, let me move on to you and in your role as a consultant operating in Africa. This is obviously a very exciting time. You've got prospects of enormous growth over the next 10, 20 years in the LPG sector. How do you see your role in helping in that whole development of the LPG industry?
Well, thank you very much, David, for having me. And you know how much I'm passionate about clean cooking via all sorts of technologies, including LPG. Yes, just to answer your question then. So I see several roles that that consultants could play in the sector. And I will speak to about 4 aspects. The first one is to really derive an understanding on the potential market. This would involve characterizing and building a structured understanding of potential LPG demand on the continent. So this can be done by segmenting the market, the potential market, and identifying the barriers for adoption in each of the market segments, and ultimately identifying appropriate business strategies to target those customer segments. The second aspect is around facilitating investment. Obviously, consultants do a lot of advisory work, and in this regard, this could be evaluating investment risks and opportunities across the value chain. We know for sure that some African markets, notably South Africa, are supply constrained due to insufficient midstream and downstream facilities. And thirdly, the other aspect that I see consultants doing is really assisting entrepreneurs in the sector. So I'm talking about your sort of new innovative entrepreneurs, notably those in the pay-as-you-cook business model, and the assistance to these sort of entrepreneurs could be around scoping addressable markets, identifying growth markets, doing strategic and business planning, and assessing how such innovative entrepreneurs can position themselves competitively in markets that in which they operate. Lastly, I think consultants can also help raise capital. We at ENEA help entrepreneurs raise capital in this specific sector, and we leverage our knowledge on the market, on technology, on the different players, on investors, to assist entrepreneurs in this regard. And we're being approached by a number of investors willing to deploy debt or equity in this specific market.
Right, thanks, Harriet. And I've just seen in the handouts, you have a full presentation that will be made available to all the people that have registered for this event, not just attended it, because we have over 70 people online at the moment. This morning we had over 120, but we had many more who actually registered and didn't get a chance to join. So your presentation and the other presentations will be available to everybody afterwards. It's interesting what you said about assisting entrepreneurs, or I guess that includes the startup world.
Yeah.
WLPGA for the last 3 years has run a competition aimed at the startup community with a particular challenge, and we're just about to launch the World LPG Challenge 21 in a week or two's time. So look out for that, because it might be something that ENEA would even have a go at themselves, because there's cash prizes for the winners for that. Mm-hmm. We're running a little bit behind time, and I don't really want to cut this short, but we don't have any questions in the question box. Can I just ask the question to everybody? Is there anything that you would like to add other than the discussion that we've just had? Walt, what about you? Have we missed anything on your side? We talked about bio-LPG and the possible impact on the distressed cargoes of fossil.
Yeah, I think what Michael Kelly, he put a slide near the end of his presentation, and we're talking about unlocking growth in the area, and and we see we cover the whole world, and we're looking closely at East Africa, because it's starting from a small base, just generally, but it's growing very quickly. And we've seen a lot of pent-up demand. It's easy to say, well, geez, the country, or country X has a average income of X dollars or X euros or whatever, and whatever local currency. But within that country, there's pockets of people who make who have a lot of who have high earnings, and there's other people who have lower earnings, and so we think there's pockets of pent-up demand. And we see a lot of this infrastructure coming in, like Banar was talking about. And we see new terminals coming in, and like in the port of Mombasa, there's this Kipeva terminal coming in, and we think that's going to enable a big growth in consumption, both in Kenya, but also in surrounding areas. Rwanda, it's Tanzania, and so we should expect to see increased use of those terminals that come in. But still, once that pent-up demand is met, and we expect that the import capacity is going to be greater than what the demand is there, then you start to hit back into the affordability issues, and where it becomes really important for the governments to make the rules clear, and to make them equitable, and to make everything safe, and to work on being able to have delivery. And I realize that subsidy programs and things like that may be out of reach for many of these local governments. And so from that standpoint, then you have to work on the affordability of people and what they can afford to bring in and what the delivery cost is. And I think it's one other just note here is that, you heard that a lot more of the supply to the area is coming from the United States, and a lot of that's coming on BLGCs. And so right now, the port infrastructure really can't accommodate a full load coming off of a VLGC, which Bernard was what he said is so important in that respect. But the new terminal coming in may be able to handle those VLGCs, and so that should be a big enabler when that happens. Because right now they're having to do a port, or they're having to do lightering and things like that to be able to use these, to use the LPG off of these big ships. And I don't think that was really mentioned earlier, that it's not as simple as U.S. plus VLGC freight. You also have to deal with the fact that they're dual porting and and doing lightering, and that increases cost above what you might think initially. Yeah.
I found it quite amazing that all that product's coming all the way from the US into Mombasa when you've got the Gulf just around the corner.
Yeah.
Somebody's done the sums.
Right. Well, there's a big call on that. With India growing so quickly and South Asia, there's a big call on that, and the US just keeps growing and growing in their available supply. So you're seeing trade redistributing.
Yeah.
David.
Yes, Harriet.
Yeah, I just wanted to raise a point around the role of government in not only dealing with the four A's, so the four issues of affordability, availability, access, and awareness of LPG, but really integrating clean cooking or LPG into national energy planning. So a lot of energy roadmaps will really just be focused on rural electrification, but rarely do you find a policy on clean cooking. So I've seen some countries setting targets, but there's no clear roadmap, and there's I don't see a co-option of the clean cooking agenda into national energy planning. I think these in markets where high adoption rates were achieved, such as in Indonesia and India, and now Bangladesh. The government played a very key role, including its national oil companies. I think that even in Africa, there is a role that the government can play, and we already see this in some markets. We see in Kenya, where we are today, a fairly supportive government towards incentivizing LPG adoption, and NOC, National Oil Kenya, that has a pilot program. But we also see at the extreme end, like the poor example of a government doing something in the LPG sector, and that would be Ethiopia. Not to pick on Ethiopia here, but yes, they've done. The Ethiopian government has basically been very hands-off on the LPG sector, and despite being your second most populous country, Ethiopia consumes just 20,000 tons of LPG. That just shows you, the role of a government can do in setting the tone for the market, in facilitating investment in the sector, in making the product available in the market.
Yeah, absolutely right, Harriet. A good example that I can give is in Mozambique. We went. Michael Kelly and I went to Mozambique 3 years ago now, and we had a workshop with the industry and government, and the clear message that we gave, because they were on the cusp of bringing new reserves of natural gas onshore, and we said, look, you need and you're going to tell me we didn't go far enough. You need a roadmap for LPG. But actually, you need more than that. You need a roadmap for LPG, and you need to understand the cooking side of the country as well, and you bring that into it. But one of the lessons I think we've all learned from Indonesia and India is that for the LPG industry to really grow hard, you need a supportive champion in the country. And in Indonesia, it was the deputy president, Yusuf Kalla, who back in 2007, I think it was, got behind this kerosene to LPG conversion program. And in India, it was the Prime Minister Modi himself who did that. And I think what we need is, we have Wanjiku within the industry as an LPG champion, but we probably need somebody high up in government in Kenya to drive it as well. So roadmaps and champions, these are the sort of things we need to make the industry grow hard. Look, I'm going to have to draw a line under it. Thank you all very much for joining this panel discussion. I think we could have gone on for a long time, but we have 3 more presentations to show you. And what I'm going to ask now, after I say thank you again to everybody, is to go up to that little stage tab again and log off this session and log on to the next session, which is session 10, I think, Alfred. It is power generation.